Yes, the microphone's on. I'm doing this from the TARBIS, so I don't have the remote mic. I did not have a chance to make an entry video, so I'm literally running YouTube free music in the background through the computer, and it's just looping back into the microphone. So, lowest production values on the internet, proud of it. We'll turn it down, maybe that'll help the reverb. No worries, guys. Thanks for looking out for me. We'll just play with the audio here a bit. Voice check 1 2 3 4 5. All right, you guys are going to hear me make a phone call and say I'll round up Ken and Steve, but I'm doing everything by telephone and the laptop, very remote operation, so you'll probably hear me mumbling in the background. Hey, it's fine. Yeah. Well, it's not a problem. Okay. He's out of position. He might call us later. All right. We'll go ahead and get this ball rolling. Steve, I don't have don't have kill the music here. 3, 2, 1. Music is off. Let's see. The microphone is on. Sound check. Let me put you on speaker. Yeah, I don't have a way to monitor the live stream because I'm using the phone to talk to you without probably running the battery dead, and I didn't bring the charger with me. So you'll have to keep me informed of what everybody's saying. All right, guys, real quick, we'll start off a little early tonight. This is Patty Hemingway, who believed to be the last Royal Air Force pilot to fight in the Battle of Britain. He just passed away at the age of 105, so I wanted to dedicate tonight's live stream to him and to the few. And for those who don't know, the few were the pilots who flew in the Royal Air Force in the Battle of Britain. All righty, so turn the camera on and hang it. There we go. That's little old May. And Steve, I think we're running about a 17-second delay tonight. Just
okay.
Okay. Not the most secure setup here with the camera, but it'll with the computer, but it'll do. Well, everybody, welcome to a Friday night Maxsmodels live stream. Since I have to go to work tomorrow, I'll be gone Saturday. We hadn't done one in a couple of weeks. I thought I'd knock one out. So I have authority from high command now. I can tell everybody what's going on, although pretty much everyone's already figured it out. And I need to back up a little bit to get that light in my face. You're going to be able to get shadow all night. Earthquake in Florida. So here's the dealio. First off, yes, I am retiring early. I signed the documents at the end of the month, which ironically the day after I have jury duty. This will be my last trip. I plan to document it and make a video about it. And I'm doing what's called VESP, Voluntary Early Separation Program. Basically, it's a buyout. Things are changing in the airline industry, and I think I would rather be a spectator than a participant. They made us a nice little package. So I'll be full-time modeling and YouTubing and whatever else I can think of. I did monetize the channel, been reading up on the rules, and right now, you ready for it? Guess how much money the analytics is showing I've earned so far. Take a guess, Steve. Take a guess.
$1.38.
$1.40. Good guess. We have $1, and they don't pay till you make $100. So I have $1.40 in the bank. Somebody gave me a $2 super chat. I didn't even know what that was. I just turned it on. I did not turn on commercials. I mean, you got to draw the line somewhere. But I'm turning on the other stuff. Of course, bye-bye to all the cool music in our videos because pretty much none of my videos can be monetized because, well, I use a lot of it. Now, to YouTube's credit, they don't take the video. They've only taken down 1 or 2 or 3 videos and killed 1 live stream. So all in all, I think we're doing pretty good. To answer a question that came up in the live stream before I had to turn it off, no, I don't think they have any issues with consumption of adult beverages and cough syrup on camera. They're more worried about the shooty bang bangs and the boomsticks. So we won't be doing any of that, at least on a live stream, because bad things have apparently happened at one point. So my last day will be Monday, and I'll turn my stuff in on Tuesday and sign the contract at the end of the month, and that's that. So I will be.
Doctor said, with what you've earned from YouTube so far, you could almost buy a bottle of paint.
Speaking of which, huge shout out to Hurricane Hobbies today. Ian has been helping me out with my modeling supply costs. God bless him. And you want if YouTube said do commercials, I was like, hey Ian, you want to advertise because he's the place I'd like to advertise because Ian's got a great shop and he does a lot for me. He does a lot for the channel and he does a lot for the hobby. And I'm very blessed. Somebody just sent me some pictures today of a hobby shop, and I've already forgotten where it was, but it was pretty nicely stocked up. I think it was in Pennsylvania. But I love getting pictures of real hobby shops, that have lots of model supplies as well as kit models and everything. And they're getting rare. There's still a few of them around. But I think my favorite one, though, just is still JD Hobbies in San Pedro, Louis Lee's place. Because Lou, he's got so many vintage. He's got just rows and rows of vintage kits as well as so much new stuff. He's got stuff I never heard of. I found kit model companies I'd never heard of. Same at Burbank Hobbies. I found some companies there. And I was with Mike Machat, and he was talking about they'd all gone to digital box art. And Mike, being a real artist, he can spot digital work like that. And it's not knocking digital work, but he's from the school of paint. You know what? I think I'm going to rotate this thing a little bit. Hang on, everybody. We're going to get shaky screen. Florida quake. I want you to get the light where it's illuminating my face a little bit. Okay, if you see anybody peering in the window over my shoulder, let me know. So, anywho, I got to get my good side. No, that's right. I don't have a good side. So, but anyway, while I was at Hurricane Hobbies today, they had a brand new RC SE5A, and I can't believe I didn't think to get a picture of it. But I was telling him about the SE5 and how, personally, I think it's probably the best fighter the Allies had for a lot of reasons. Mainly, it was easy to fly for low-time pilots while still being agile. And I know a lot of people don't like to build World War I models or biplanes because of all of the rigging. And Trey over Trey's Models and Mark from Montana have been doing a buddy build. They're each building the old Aurora Gotha. And those are some of the pictures you saw. One of them was the Wingnut Wings plane, and one of them was the Gotha. We'll be talking about that because he's rigging them up and everything. And he really made that Gotha look good, especially for a 1958 Aurora kit. And I think he just about drove himself insane doing it. And Mark does a lot of World War I models. And
I don't want to interrupt you here.
Yeah, go ahead, or you won't get to talk.
There's been a few questions here about, do you get to keep your uniform? Do you get to keep your captain's cap?
It's funny you should mention that. This is my captain's cap from US Air Express, and over there I have the old, even nastier one from US Airways Express when I flew with Mesa. Yes, you buy your uniforms, you keep everything. And they do ask you to destroy anything that would be possibly used by some nefarious person. Most guys just throw the stuff away or give it to the company. I actually have 3 tunics, 3 coats with the sleeve stripes and everything. And I was asking them about that, and they're like, if you want to, you can drop it off, just donate it. I don't know what they'll do with it. Half of them from the old style, so the stripes are wrong. So they'll either just hang in the back of my closet, or maybe I'll give them to them or shred them. I mean, even if you take the sleeves off, you got those bands on there, so they're kind of useless. The blue shirts, I used to get the shirts with the embroidered wings, but then I realized the problem with those was, like I got both my nice sweaters with the commando sweaters it's funny, gosh, I don't have it with me. Now I do the live stream of the TARBIS, and what I have is in the office. I have a sweater. The sweater I use, the pullover blue sweater, is still the one I got when I was brand new to the company as an FO, and later on I sent it and they put the little star and wreath on it when I upgraded. So I've had it 19 and a half years, and it's gotten pretty tattered. So I don't know what I'll do with that. But when I went back to BFO a year and a half ago, I got a brand new first officer sweater. It's really nice, fits good, and it's warm and it's comfortable. But it's got the wings on it, but they're embroidered. But I found out, in the old monogram kits, they gave you that rectangular monogram patch.
Yep.
It fits perfectly over it. So I'm going to have that stitched over the wings so I can wear the sweater and advertise models and not be violating any policies or anything. But a long time, a couple of years ago, I quit buying the shirts with embroidered wings and started buying them with the pin-on wings, because that way, you can take all the stuff off your shirt and you don't identify yourself as a pilot. I mean, you got the 2 little holes for the wings, but that's it. So the blue shirts and the blue pants I can keep and just use as regular clothing. Maybe come out here the pants are actually kind of nice. They're dress pants, so I'll keep those and use them as dress pants, which is fully authorized by the company even when you're still working there. But the shirts, I've got about 6 of them. Only one of them has embroidered wings. I'll tear that out. Monica's already got that one picked out to be rags to hell because she was working on the dolls today. She always needs rags. So I'm pretty sure that's where some of my old uniforms are going. Yes, my uniforms that I wore proudly marching down the concourse, doing the airline parade with people looking at me with respect and admiration, are going to be shredded up to be, used with isopropyl and thinner and paint and remover and, that's actually not a bad way to put it for a shirt for a coat to go, is it? The wings, the actual metal wings, I plan to. Monica bought me that Dremel drill press thing. I plan to use that to drill holes in the stands, right here. This Airbus I'm working on. If I put it in JetBlue colors, I'll put the wings on the stand, and I've got a couple of professional JetBlue models that I'll drill out and put the wings on the stand. So, keepsakes. The shoulder boards, they're useless. I may toss them in a bag. I'm going to keep a few for his keepsakes or something. But usually, just to answer the question, the uniforms are yours. They just ask you to destroy them or don't let them fall into the hands they shouldn't fall into. Most guys throw the junk in the attic and forget all about it. And
one of the other questions was, so when they make the announcement, do you think that the cancellations will be north of 15,000 flyers now who won't fly on the airline because you won't be piloting?
Huh. Well, I've already passed the word, folks. Don't worry. The upcoming generation are quite competent. But I did get some very nice comments from folks. And I've been out of Orlando for 17 years. Now you get to know people. And that's the people are already going to miss. I'll miss two things. One, I'll miss the people. And two, I'll miss the ability to jump seat. I'll still be able to non-rev, but that's space available. But I won't be able to ride in the cockpit anymore. But I won't miss, the 4 a.m. wake ups and the 4 legs a day through crappy weather and all the other junk that goes with it, and getting grope checked by TSA every day and all that kind of stuff. I won't be able to use known crew member, but heck, they random you half the time anyway, so that's hardly a loss. I think the other thing I might miss, and I hate to say this, sounds a little petty, but it's kind of true. I will miss the occasional look of respect as I march down the, concourse. Dun, dun, dun. It's good for your ego. But no biggie. But you know what else? But you know what I can do now, Steve? I can have a beer at the airport.
There you go. Greg wants to know if they're going to give you a wet salute on the last flight.
Unfortunately, I think the cannon, the water cannon salutes are a thing of the past. Maybe for some guys who do what you might call a natural retirement, but since I'm doing an early out, I don't. But plus, I don't think Orlando does them. And right now, as you guys all know, the industry is under a microscope because of the things that have happened. And I think it's that I've kind of taken a look. It's just time to close my logbooks. I am working on a retirement video, sort of a, tour of the last trip and a few other things with some background photos.
Brian says you should have Monica make a figure of yourself and use parts from your uniform to make the uniform of the doll.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I might run that by her. That's pretty cool. See, glue troopers are creative. So,
what do you think? I have nothing else to do?
Speaking of which, you already know this, but
Frank says here, have your neighbors get the garden hose out when you pull back in the driveway from this flight.
The Colonel might do it, Yeah, the Colonel's attitude is at least no one's shooting at you. But oh man, he's a great guy. Anyway, one little thing
wait a minute. Mark says you're probably going to miss the pat downs from TSA the most, right?
Not since they don't let them be co-ed anymore. What do you call it? It's actually who says I'm not going to get them? My metal hip will still set the thing off. But come on, do it like you mean it. So the one other quick thing that almost became a thing, and then we'll get on the models. You guys have seen the pictures of that G-scale railroad that I put in the video recently that's down at the neighbor's house. Well, short story, across the street, 3 doors down, we saw a for sale sign, and that was the house. We went and looked at it, and we thought we'd grab it as a rental property. got the inspection back today. That is definitely not happening. But when I saw that that old G-scale remnants of the G-scale railroad in the backyard, the first thing that popped in my mind was, oh, Ken's gonna freak. But anyway, how many people are watching?
Let us see. There are. Hold on, come on, phone. There are 89.
All right, that's not bad, especially for Friday night. But anyway, it fell through today, so that's that. So, Monica and I do have a cruise planned later in the month as a celebration on celebrity. So I'll be gone for those days, but I'll keep you posted on that. So anywho, getting back to it, I did take some pictures today while I was building. The Ontos has been a freaking little nightmare. Even though I realigned the front end of it and I've got it clamped right here. I got 5 clamps on it to try and hold the body down. It still won't seal up in the front, so I'm going to have to put some strip plastic or putty. And something that big, I think I'm going to use a strip of plastic, but that kind of teed me off. I got everything lined up. It just didn't fit right. Left a gap. I mean, and right in the front of the vehicle. But that'll be in the morning video. You'll see. And the Mustang is, it'll be in the morning video, but it's got these tiny little metal rods that have to go through these tiny metal hinges to go inside the tail, so that when you insert it, the tail will move, but it looks like a real airplane. It doesn't have the oversized plastic hinges that most models use. You can't even see them, but they work. And I decided not to waste time putting them in the elevators because I don't intend to be moving the control surfaces. It's a nice touch by Tamiya, but it's one of those things you don't have to do, and I'm not going to do it. I did it on the rudder, and it was a Royal PITA, and I was just like, you know what? This is a static display model. Oh, and then again, you'll see in the morning, I forgot to put the magnets in the scoop and the chin that were designed so that the bottom would just magnet on. And I'm like, you're thinking plastic, you're not thinking magnets. And there's this big letters MG1 and MG2, and you're like, you just look right past it. Amazing. Have you guys ever noticed how? I'm sorry, keep shaking. Just a slight little tap my foot on the floor, and the whole thing jiggles. But you guys ever noticed how easy it is to look right past which should be a relatively obvious thing on the instructions? You're focusing on these little details, and you just go right past the big letters, and you get halfway done. What's this part? Ah!
You mean like 3 of 1,000?
There you go. That's a ticket. Look, I built the 3rd one out of the injection molding machine. It was worth $1,000. Now it's junk. By the way, funny thing, when something you had told me about that came into play, I was watching Not a Pound for Air to Ground, and they were talking about underwater ejections, and I was familiar with a couple of them that he talked about. But one thing I mentioned in the comment section, I was like, everything you talked about has been portrayed or talked about in cinema, in The Bridges at Toko Ri, when William Holden, at the beginning, he has to ditch his jet, and he's talking to the Admiral later, and he goes, one bounce and I was a submarine, and talked about getting out of his... also, you'll remember the pilot episode of Sea Hunt with Lloyd Bridges and Mike Nelson. They went down to retrieve the Sea Dart that had crashed, and turned out the pilot was still alive inside. So I just thought that was... It's like, you made me read just a little too much on airplanes when someone can come up with a subject that obscure as underwater ejections, and you've got a paragraph worth of material to write.
Yeah.
I love being me. Anyway, so getting back to models. So I was Mark from Montana sent me some pictures of his build, and you know what? I'll just run them here. And I just watched the video that Trey just posted on the Gotha. They're both doing the old Aurora Gotha, and you guys, Mark this is a 1/48 scale model, and of course he's using resin figures and stuff, but that is an amazing amount of detail. Most of which he later admitted, once you had the airplane together, you can't even see it, which is sad. But
my dad, when I was a kid building models, he used to harp on that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So spent so much time building this thing, and you can't see half of what you did because it's covered up.
But you know you did it.
Yeah.
But, okay, let's try this again.
Excuse me.
Well, you okay?
Yeah, it just went. I was having a drink. It went down the wrong line.
Oh, yeah, we've all done that. But first off, if I didn't already say it, hats off to Mark for this amazing 148 scale build. And Trey's is looking good, too. I think Mark's out ahead of him. But I'm going to pause the picture when we get to the photo I wanted to show. I mean, okay, here we go. These are resin figures, aftermarket figures. But you look at the rigging on that thing, and it's not quite as bad as the Felix stove, but it's more or less in the same league. And I have watched video after video, and there are a dozen different ways to attach the line. Some people use metal wire, but the reason I was going to talk about this was while I was at Hurricane Hobbies, Kieran, who works there, asked me, I was talking about the SE5, and I said, you know, the first airplane that they really used in the First World War was called the Taube. And I apologize for not having a picture handy, guys. I didn't have much time to put this together because we were dealing with stuff. But anyway, if you go up and look at the Taube, it looks, I mean, I've seen a real one. They look flimsy because they are flimsy. You look at the aircraft they were flying in 1914 when the war broke out versus what they were flying 4 years later, and the level of advancement is absolutely staggering. I mean, you went from these flimsy pushers that were just nothing but a flying ball of rigging wires that didn't have synchronized guns, so they put the engine in back so they could shoot straight forward, or they're mounting the Lewis gun up on top of the wing to shoot over the prop. And then you look at 4 years later, they've got SPADs and Fokker D7s and SE5As and Newport 28s that can bust 150 miles an hour, twin synchronized guns. I mean, real killing machines. Almost nobody's wearing parachutes. The airplanes use nitric dope to seal up the linen, so you basically are flying an airplane that's bathed in what effectively is rocket fuel. You know, I realized it was the world they knew. But when I build a model like this, I cannot help but think about things like that. They were hard to fly. Now, the reason I was telling him I thought the SE5A was one of the best, same for the Fokker D7, by the way. The two boxy square-looking fighter planes were so bloody good was because they were easy to fly. And half these pilots didn't have 25 hours. Go watch Dawn Patrol with Errol Flynn and David Niven. How much flying time do you have? 12 and a half hours, sir. You know, it's bad enough when you watch the Battle of Britain and Simon tries to land with the wheels up and they fire the very pistol, you know, and shoot the flare across the runway. He goes around, comes back. One of my favorite lines in the movie is that old crew chief, undercarriage lever a bit sticky. So yes, it was. I wouldn't tell the old man that, not if I were you. But when he does land the Spitfire, he bounces about 3 times. That crew chief goes, "Bumpsy daisy, it's enough to make you weep." And I love that. But he comes inside after almost landing wheels up, and old Robert Shaw's waiting on him, the skipper. He's like, how much time do you have in Spitz? Or, 6.5, sir. Let's make it 7 before Jerry has you for lunch. But I was like, you're flying in combat with maybe 230 hours total flying time, 6.5 hours in the fighter plane that you're going to go get shot at in. It's a miracle any of those guys survived. And I was telling Kieran, half of all the planes are lost in accidents. And in fact, in a lot of cases, only about a third are lost in combat. And he was kind of shocked by that. And I was like, think about it. You got 20-year-old kids who go to work on a bicycle, never owned a car, flying the most sophisticated machines. You realize that the people who flew these Gothas and the SE-5s and the World War I fighter planes, they walked to work or rode a horse.
Or a bike.
Yeah. Or a bicycle. And
Donnelly brings up a good point. He goes, We look at them now and call them flimsy crates, but at the time they were state of the art.
That was the cutting edge. That Gotha and the Handley Page 0400, which was its British counterpart, were probably the two best bombers in the world. And they kind of laid the groundwork for the airplanes that came next. It was all iterative. It was, but the rapid development was because you remember the Right Stuff when after Jaeger's broken the sound barrier and I think Crosshill got Mach 2 and the reporter played I think by Dave Cullen was saying, do you know what makes your airplanes fly? And they're all talking about aerodynamics. He goes, funding. No bucks, no Buck Rogers. Well, that's true. During the war, the coffers were open. Do you know which major combatant during the war never manufactured a single fighter plane?
No.
The United States. We flew French and British airplanes. We didn't even... Our first fighters after the war, I saw a picture in 1919, were basically American copies of the SE-5 with the Liberty engine. And for 1919, it was a good airplane. But what's amazing is there's a bomber, and of course, if I had time to set this up, I got a picture of it, the Handley Page Hayford, which is a goofy-looking airplane. Kind of reminds you of this Gotha. But they put the fuselage on the upper wing. So the lower wing is a carry-through all the way. It's fixed gear, multi-engine, open cockpit. It doesn't have as much rigging as this airplane, and it's all, a lot of metal in it and everything, but it's still, design-wise, it kind of looks the same. That was 1935 that thing entered service. How fast do you think it was ruled obsolete? A year later, they flew the Hurricane, the Spitfire, the Messerschmitt, and I think a year after that, the Zero. So, man, Abel, the 1930s, the air races of the 20s and 30s, aviation was moving at a blinding pace. And when I build models, and when I build these models, when I'm not screaming and yelling about how the rigging's falling apart or something, I think about those things, and people go, it's all very romantic. I go, yeah, you go fly one on a cold European day. Why do you think they're wearing 4 or 5 layers of leather and fur and bundled up? Because there's no heat in those things. You know what's between you and the atmosphere? Linen. People say canvas, but I think it's actually linen. You're sitting in a wicker seat. Wicker. That's what's holding your butt in the airplane. A leather strap on a wicker seat. You know what wicker doesn't stop? Bullets.
Bullets. Or farts.
yeah. Sometimes it makes them whistle, but that's another story. So rigging an airplane like this, there's 3 common ways to do it. One is just to let the glue dry at the attach point and stretch it and hope it doesn't break. The other is to drill holes all the way through the wing and lace it. And then, of course, using little turnbuckles, which is probably the most realistic looking, but also one of the most time consuming. And at least when you use the turnbuckles, if one of them does let go, it doesn't affect any of the others. If you try to do by lacing through everything, then they're kind of all connected. And if one of them breaks, it can cause others to let go. But a lot of guys use easy line. Some people don't like it because they don't feel it looks good. Some guys use little thin metal wires. You can actually buy brass rigging kits. I'll try one of those if I ever get my hands on. I've actually hanging right here. I have some guitar string that Eduardo gave me. E strings might work. I know Bruce, Mystic Model Ships, likes to use those, but it's he loves rigging because he makes all those sailing ships. But airplanes, I think, are a little bit trickier because you don't have quite as much access. Obviously, do the inner struts first before you do the front and back. Do the ones that's between the struts, fore and aft. The Gotha is particularly large because this is and so is the Felix. So this is a 6-bay airplane. Bay being the gap between the struts, and but Kieran, was interested. He says, you got to do a live stream about, the evolution of these aircraft. And I'm like, and if I'd had more time to put some pictures together, we probably would. But model building, it's the later in the war you get, the easier the models are to build because the less rigging they had, because they started learning to design airplanes that didn't need as much rigging. That being said, though, the famous Fokker triplane that the Red Baron flew, it actually didn't have really much in the way of any rigging. It was designed to not need it. In fact, it didn't even need the struts. It had to have the cabane struts that held the wing to the fuselage, but it actually didn't even really need the struts that are out on the wingtips. But Anthony Fokker was told, listen, the German high command is extremely conservative. They're not going to trust an airplane without struts. So he wisely put them in there, making it a very robust airplane. But it was one of the first airplanes to get rid of the rigging. And you notice it had thicker wings, were a larger spar. And here's another one of Mark's builds. Let's see, this is a Wingnut Wings 132nd scale. And this is a Fowls. And that's one of those companies that Fowls are a Rumpler. No, I think it's a Rumpler. That's a Rumpler. I'm sorry. And by the way, I don't know if it's still flying, but about 40 years ago, I remember seeing it in Trade a Plane going for sale for like $1 million in 1979. It was the only original German World War I airplane still flying, and it was a Rumpler. It was one of these. And they made observation planes. A lot of companies we don't think. Everybody thinks of Fokker, Newport, Spad, Sopwith, but people don't think much about, maybe Bristol. They don't think much about Rumpler or Fowls, but they were out there in big numbers. And but the God, Wingnut Wings make such good models, though. Good Lord! Now you see here, it looks like he used probably gas patch turnbuckles, which give it a more authentic look. And I've seen some beautifully made models. Some guys have mastered attaching the lines without using anything. The line just disappears on the wing, which is not, especially with no glue stains or anything showing, that's really hard to do. But then you and I went to the museum, and I'm looking at that Sopwith Camel. I'm like, holy crap! You got all these turnbuckles, all this stuff. You just can't scale that down and still work with it. It just gets too small. And but you remember when we were at the Air and Space, we're looking at Sopwith and I'm commenting on it. I'm like, you think how much work went into building this thing? Yeah, the people they hired to make those airplanes were usually furniture makers.
Yes.
Look
at it this way. They were all handmade.
They were. I mean, they had a jig, but still, everything was put together, wrapped, painted. Of course, they had a lot of people working on it, and everybody specialized. And the thing about these turnbuckles that a lot of folks don't realize is those turnbuckles are tensioners. You put it on, and then you can adjust the turnbuckles, and of course, that tightens it up. You had to rig the airplane, because if you got it out of rig, the airplane would fly crooked, and it would slow it down and waste performance. And these airplanes operated on a razor's edge of performance as it was. And even back then, aviation was a very precise thing. And so Hans and Heinrich here are going to take an unreliable or fragile airplane covered in rocket fuel and go up and let people shoot at them so they can take a few snapshots. That's a good way to spend a Friday afternoon. But I guess it beat being in the trenches.
For sure.
And
I find the positioning of the engine and the exhaust interesting on this plane.
Well, you think about it. Putting that exhaust up like that means it blows away from the airplane up over the wing. And of course, there's a radiator there also. It's a liquid-cooled engine. Probably a Mercedes, but I'm not sure. It's a lot. I mean, the Sopwith Camel had that Lerone rotary, as did the Newports, and the Germans had the Obersoll, where the whole engine rotated. That's how it cooled itself. That's how it circulated the oil. What do you call those? What do you call those old engines that, by design, they lose all their oil when you fly them, like the old motorcycles, the old Harleys from the 20s.
Like a dry sump?
Is it a dry sump? It's total loss. That's it. It's a total loss system. I looked at buying a Harley that was in Paterson, New Jersey. And every time I hear that song, The Hurricane, about the hurricane who was arrested in Paterson. Gardner? I think it's Paterson, not Patterson. Is it Patterson or Paterson?
Patterson.
Patterson. It's only got one T. No, I'm sorry. Colt Paterson was the revolver. Everybody calls it a Patterson. It's the Colt, I think, was a Paterson. Yeah, Patterson, New Jersey.
You know who's from Patterson, New Jersey?
What?
You know who's from Patterson, New Jersey?
The Hurricane?
Lou Costello.
Oh.
And they have a park, Lou Costello Park.
Oh. Well, anyway, there was a guy out in Patterson that had a 1930-something 29 or 31 Harley for sale. And it was painted up like an old police bike. It looked cool, fairly original. I was like, you only wanted like $6,000 for it or something. I was like, hey, how to get that? That'd be fun to ride around on. And then I read that it was a total loss oil system. And what's that? So I looked that up. I'm like, wait a minute. It literally sits there and leaks oil by design. And when you ride it, it drops oil on the chain. So it's constantly, so every time you gas up, you got to dump oil in it. I think I'll pass on that one.
Yeah.
And that was a self-propelled environmental hazard. Well, some of these old engines were the same way. And by the way, a lot of them use castor oil, which caused problems with, the laxative effect on the cruise, which is why a lot of them carried the flask with them full of various, brandies or, to help offset that effect. And so I was like, you just don't appreciate how crude all this was. And I actually got to talk to our family knew a World War I pilot flown an airplane called a Samson, which was a 2-seat observation plane. And it was primitive, but but like you say, it was bleeding edge at the time. By the end of the war, and Kermit Weeks has one down here in Florida, Fokker had come up with the D8, which was a parasol airplane with virtually no external rigging. And luckily, the war ended before it got into combat because it could have been a real problem. It had a single thick wing that was suspended only by cabane struts above the fuselage. So you didn't have the drag of the lower wing, so it was faster. But that high lift wing still made it pretty maneuverable. And I don't like the way they portray the airplanes in the movies because they always use either post-war biplanes or stunt planes. And they weren't nearly as agile or moved nearly as quickly as the movies like to portray it because they were slow airplanes. And even a quick turn, they went 140, 150 wide open. And they got them flying like X-Wing fighters in the movies. But they put the big roaring sound to them. I'm like, they sound like they sound like a freaking chainsaw. If you ever get the chance, go to Old Rhinebeck in New York and go to the air show where they fly the replica and even a few of the original airplanes. And you listen to them and watch them fly and you realize just how delicate they are. And they're delicate to build. Delicate does not downscale well. You get one of these models and you try to build it and you realize that these things they're probably for size more rugged than the original airplanes, but just you need to make a jig just to hold the wings in place straight. I mean, getting the wing straight on a biplane is a trick. I built so many lopsided biplanes when I was a kid because I didn't realize that. And now when I make one, it's like I obsess over trying to get the wing straight. And let's just say the TARBIS has had its share of blue language bounce off the walls.
I think any building space can say that.
Well, this is true. But anyway,
Danielle S&C wants to know, are you going to volunteer to work and fly at Kermit Weeks' place?
First off, I don't think anybody gets to touch Kermit's planes but him. But no, unfortunately, I have once I'm done, I'm going to let my medical expire. I've been watching too much Blanco Lirio and Scott Purdue. I have turned into that cliche of an airline pilot. I started in small planes. I love small planes. I love aviation of all kinds, but they kind of scare me now because I'm used to, 18,000 pounds a side of roaring thrust in a turbine engine. I get in a 172 and I'm like, really? That's all the power. I used to flight instruct in these things. What was I thinking? And if I could have an airplane, well, you got to take my girth into consideration. I think an airplane that would be a fun plane to own would be like a Vultee BT-13. Relatively low maintenance because it has a fixed gear, 450 horse rate. They're still but it's not too thirsty. Or a Ryan PT-26, which, by the way, if you got something with a Ranger engine, those things burn a lot of oil because of the way they're designed. But I mean, it's by design. But you get in these old, these vintage airplanes look beautiful. Stearmans and Wacos and Ryans are gorgeous airplanes. And when you're in the military and you have a professional mechanic taking care of it and you're not paying the bills, that's fine. You go out and buy one of these things. Well, Steve, it's the same thing with classic cars.
Yeah, it's the never-ending story.
Yep. What would you say is the most expensive classic car to upkeep if you want to drive it on a semi-regular basis? Or what type of car? What vintage?
Oh, it would have to be like a Ferrari.
Oh, okay, that's fair. Yeah.
Because the upkeep and the maintenance is fantastic on the older ones.
Yeah.
Or as my friend Joe Marchetti used to say, when I used to regal over his multi-million-dollar car collection.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Joe, these cars are worth millions. He goes, Steve, they were shit when they're $12,000. They're shit when they're $1 million.
Yeah. What car I really like that I should get a model of one is that flat front Cord.
The flat front.
Cord had the Cord.
Oh, yeah.
The late
812. Yeah.
Yeah, the late 30s. And
AMT makes a great kit of that. It's out of production, but it's a great kit.
Well, the reason I bring that up is I love to watch Jay Leno's Garage, and Jay seems like a guy who really knows how to enjoy his money. What I like is he shares it with people. He makes these videos because we'll never get to drive these things, but we get to watch him do it. And he seems like a nice guy. Anyway, unless you're Conan O'Brien, but that's another story. I looked at it. He was talking about how heavy it was and how it rode and everything. And I think it's just something about it I liked. It just seemed like the most solid car they'd ever made. But
he's very generous. I've had I was fortunate enough to be able to go to his garage.
Mm-hmm.
And the guys, he's got quite a staff that works there. He treats them all very well. He drives every one of the cars that are in the collection. They're all insured and registered, including the steam cars.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're all impeccable. They can make anything in that shop they have there. It's unbelievable.
I'm sure that's one of the best equipped shops in the world.
It's unbelievable. And, it's now going to be a museum. He's made the financial, investment to have a museum built that will house his collection and will continue after he's gone.
Well, I imagine he's worked with Peterson. This is the Airbus 320 kit that I have set aside. It's right here with the DC-8 that I need to get working on, and I probably need to get some JetBlue decals for it. I'm not going to try and over detail it, but I finally got the seam on top to disappear, but the one on the bottom, which I'm not really too worried about, but that one just, Trey had built that big 1/32 scale Messerschmitt 110, and he had trouble at the fuselage and the bottom of the wing where there was a ridge that he had to deal with. And I got the same thing here, It's funny how the simplest things can drive you bonkers. And if I build this, put it in the decals and put it on the stand, no one's ever going to pick it up and go, I can see the seam, but I'll know it's there. And the one that was a trick and it's actually, the seams are still showing bad. This is a Ladella DC-8, stretch DC-8, and I've made about 4 attempts, but the seams are still showing, especially on the bottom. And I'm kind of like, you know what, that's just good enough. The ones on the top, I can see them, but they're not as bad. There you go. Now you're trying to get the shadow where you can see them. And, putty sand. I just got to put more effort into it. You can see well, you probably can't in this light, but there's sanding marks here. It's white plastic, so You always think you've got it, you know.
Yeah, until you prime it.
Until you prime it.
What the?
But
everybody's commenting about how the hardest cars are the British cars because there's always something wrong.
Well, yeah.
Guy, it's the Lucas Lord of Darkness.
Well, yeah, the Prince of Darkness. Yeah. The Darth Vader of the auto industry. A friend of mine had I forget, it was a BSA, and he replaced the Lucas electrical system with a Joe Hunt magneto system. And he said he made a different machine out of it. I was talking to somebody just recently about why I go to the Jack's Con and everything. And once in a while, get a table and run it or something just for kicks and giggles, kind of hang out with our people. But I love being able to get these kits because there are deals to be found. This is $7. This is the old monogram kit, the Goshawk. I don't know if I built it or my brother did. But when I was making 8mm movies, I think I wanted to make I kit bashed it. I want to make a fictitious airplane, and I used some parts for this and something else and made a retractable gear biplane that more or less is kind of like the Gulf Hawk. Little kits like this, it's really nice because we're talking about rigging biplanes. Well, first off, this doesn't have a lot of rigging because it's a later version, but also this is the kind of model you can get away without rigging. It looks good without it because unlike a World War I airplane where the rigging was just a quintessential part, this is one of those planes that even if you did rig it, it wouldn't be too terrible. But if you don't, it still looks great, and because there was so little rigging. And it's not a super high fidelity model, but it's good enough. I had opened it up, and it actually had more parts than I remembered.
That's a whole separate other topic. How many times have you bought a kit, and you open the box and you go, "There's like 10 pieces in here."
Yeah.
And then you buy another kit and you think, "Oh, this is going to be really difficult and complicated," or not difficult and complicated. It's not going to have a lot of pieces, and there's tree upon tree upon tree upon tree upon parts.
Oh, you mean like that Mustang right there that's got 9 trees hanging on the wall? But yeah, this has 6 parts just to the engine and cowling, so it's which is nice because you can paint the exhaust separately and everything, and then just put it together. But this is exactly the kind of kit that I love because it's not too complicated. The deal with this is is painting it. That's going to be the time-consuming part because you got the neutrality colors and everything, and it's not a hard paint job. And what I probably do is paint the whole fuselage white, then tape off and hit it again with the gray and peel out, have a real white band instead of using the decal. I think here's the decal sheet. You got the band there, but these are old decals. I doubt they'll be particularly good. But then again, I have to come up with the lettering for it, so maybe I will use the band, just trim it down. I don't know. Yeah, see how it goes. You know what? Put the white band around it and put the decal over it. That ought to look pretty good. But but like I can do the white with just tape. I can do the wing white, put the tape down, and then shoot it yellow, or probably shoot it black, then shoot it yellow, and then peel the tape, and you're done. And I have other decals for the wings. But there might be aftermarket decals available. It's just a neat little model. I remember building it. I don't remember my brother, but I remember having it. I think I might still have a picture of it somewhere. But man, $7 for nostalgia, and it was originally supposed to be 10. And
where did you get?
I waited till the after. I got this at Jack's Con.
Oh, okay.
And I think this was $5. And I built this kit several times. In fact, the modified one that Tom Daniel started that I finished is one of these also. And the one that I got, I remember I kit bashed it because the rear end was missing. It had a big chunk of plastic missing out of it. It wasn't a clean. It wasn't a clean shot. And I was like, so I just hacked off the rear end and made it a twin boom fighter. Put a big tail gun on it, and but I've never actually built this kit properly. And I was like, well, here, now this, God, oh. No, I smell the 60s. You remember the vapors from leaded gasoline?
Yes.
When you're a kid, you ever just like, oh, that sounds nice. Yep. That would explain the lowering IQ. But now that's, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So it's about 18 parts to the whole kit, you know? And,
well, you know, when you look at people are commenting about getting where they purchase kits and where they got them and stuff. I mean, hobby shows are a great source because guys are always willing to make a deal.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the beauty of them. I could almost build this while we're talking.
eBay is great because some people just, they realize they're never going to build these kits and they put them up because they got to sell them. And going to antique and flea markets are a great source.
I haven't had real good luck at flea markets because it seems like the people, I haven't seen that many models there, but the ones I did were, it's like they wanted $35. I'm like, dude, I can beat that price at JaxCon, you know.
You get a lot of $5 and $10 kits at those things.
Here's the Aurora Eschi.
Because the guy passed away and had a bunch of them in the attic.
Yes, and that's where you get your deals. Ian, I was going to take this as a road build, but I just never never had a trip with enough time. My problem is one of my favorite overnight, bar none, when I can go out with Mike Machat, is going to LA because we go do things, you know, the Queen Mary and we try to get down to JD Hobbies when we can. San Pedro is a bit of a hike, but I'm like, Mike, rule number 1, I'm not allowed to go home with more models than I left with. This was $5 at PamsCon. This is the V22 Osprey, and it's a Tallery. And the guy there, I was like, it's 148 scale. I'm like, $5. What's wrong with it? He goes, the guy already started it. I could not care less. You know, the wings are glued together. He's pre-painted some of the fuselage. A couple of the engine nacelles are built. But I'm like, for $5, I'll kit bash this thing. Because since I have virtually no financial investment in it, it's not a rare kit. It's already been started. That is almost the recipe, the secret sauce for kit bash time. And whoops, got some pretty nice decals too. Oh wow, I didn't notice this when I first said, dude, this has got aftermarket extra decals. Ooh, what a steal! I don't think those came with the kit. I mean, I don't know, but I think these are aftermarket. These are more than $5 by themselves. Nice. Pretty. God, I'll build a model just because I like the decals that come. I'll buy a kit just because I like the decals that come with it. In the next viewer's build, somebody did a kit, not a kit bash, but a what if airplane. I think it was a Hawker Tempest in Swedish markings, which, by the way, looked really good. And I love doing that. You know, fantasy decalings of it's just a way to have fun. I mean, the same reason I'm putting this P-51, this Korean build, if I get it done in time for the Korea build. By the way, I may have to push back the due date on the Korea build. Kind of falling behind with all this stuff going on. But I'm going to put it in ROK, Republic of Korea markings, because I've got freaking P-50. I got P-51 right here in American markings. I got P-51s and U.S. markings all over the place. I put one of them in Japanese markings and a little one, that little, what was that, Starfix kit? I put it in Japanese markings and melted it just so I could have Godzilla holding on to it for a while. That was my Godzilla pup, but it was too big. But, well, you know, baby Godzilla. Anyway, this is the one that also this is on the short list. This is that T-34, the one that my brother brought me from the World Jamboree. And I am really excited about this one. And it's still got I just hope all the electric components work. The kit itself is pretty basic. And my plan is to paint the upper hull and the turret the Russian green. I want to do it the way Doyle did it. And I thought I could just go over airbrush flat white over it and make a thin coat. But I bought somewhere around here. I bought that spray on glue, just Elmer's. And what I want to do is mist on, and I got a spray can right over there. I want to mist on the glue and then shake like talcum powder over it and blow it off and let it harden to give it like it's been snowed on. I think that's going to look awesome. You know what?
One of the cans at the Christmas tree store with the fake snow.
Well, I just had a thought. Before I do that to this, I'm going to practice on some junker model because I don't want to do that and find out it reacts with the paint. Well, the Elmer's won't react with it, but I just don't want to do it and find out it looks like crap. Mm-hmm. But the plan is I want to mix some white and some brown and mash it into the, I want to put some brown like mud on the tracks and then mix it in with some white and sort of get it to adhere so that it'll look like the track's been rolling through snowy mud or muddy snow. And you're a model builder. If a piece of plastic makes you start strategizing how you come up with a build, got to have a build plan, son. Rusky don't build his tank without a build plan. But I almost feel guilty about building it. Almost. But I think the Osprey, when I kit bash, will be part of the GDF. You know what that is.
Yep. And you need to have Godzilla blasting it.
Oh, of course.
With the heat ray. Have you figured out how to do a heat breath, stream yet?
Well, from what I've seen from that one that came out of Canada that was so well done, I'm thinking what you do is you have to use LEDs, and the clear stuff, and you run the LEDs down the clear water stuff, and then of course you use like orange clear to paint it, and then you light it up with the LEDs.
Make it out of resin.
What ticks me off, really gets my goat, and I don't mean like it really makes me mad. I mean, it makes me mad, but it more like makes me jealous. As I see these people that twist you've seen the YouTube videos, they'll twist some wire and make a little skeleton and put some clay on it, start shaping and playing with it. And they've got such mad skills. When they're done, they've made whatever they wanted to make. They make these beautiful looking Godzilla sculpts or King Kong or people or whatever. I'm like, where do you guys get the mad skills to do that? Because if I could do something like that, I'd do it in a freaking heartbeat. One thing I'm thinking about doing, I have the other Godzilla that was gifted to me, the big Polar Lights one, and I'm seriously considering trying to make a mold out of it so I can make them out of rubber, so I, impose it and do other stuff with it instead of just the one it's in. That's more of an undertaking than it sounds like. Just like trying to do Dan Monroe's the robot legs for Dan Monroe. I'm going to have Ken 3D print something, and there should be a file out there somewhere, because if you guys saw the episode where we had Dan Monroe as a visitor here, he made a full-size robot, which a lot of us call the B9 robot from Lost in Space. But he made the first season one was black and white, and the robot had completely independent legs. The very good kit model that's put out by Mobius is the later one where the top 3 or 4 or 5 bands that make his legs are one piece. It's more like a pair of trousers instead of completely independent legs all the way down. And he was asking if we could do that. And as I say that, I'm looking over my space pod model, and I'm like, yeah, I need to build that too. That was more the little Lost of space pod was more complicated. I looked at the instruction, opened it up. It was more to it than I expected. That's slightly involved build. I don't normally light my models unless they come with a lighting kit like the NX01 that they keep making the hollow promises though, I'm going to get to that, but I will, because I'm going to have a lot more time for it in the near future. But I don't come out and build. You kind of got to be in the mood. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I find in the morning I'm usually not in the mood to build. I want to play on the computer, have coffee, It's usually after lunch I come out here and start working. And it's funny on a relatively simple model like these ones I was just showing. I'll go through several of those real easily. Most of us will, And I kind of get excited about it because, you're going to, I hate to say it like instant gratification, but you don't have to work too hard to get the product done. But you look at this Mustang, sometimes, I don't want to say I dread coming out here, but it's like, I'm doing that in little dribs and drabs. I'm only doing a few. I just did the tail wheel, which, by the way, the tail wheel you'll see in tomorrow's video, the tail wheel has two metal rods that go inside it. I guess they're for structure because the airplane, the model's so heavy. But the work that went into making this kit is insane. Now, one thing I mentioned it before, though, you can leave a ton of this stuff out if you don't intend to have moving control surfaces and all that stuff. If you're going to make it wheels up, they actually have, and I'm looking right at it, they have a one piece with the gear doors folded and closed. If you're gonna put it on the stand and make it like that, it's not any more than an old Revell 1/32 scale kit. But if you're doing what I'm doing, because I think I have a masochistic streak I'm discovering, where you're trying to put all these little pieces into place, I think when I'm done with this, I'll be qualified to build a real Mustang. This airplane's up there with wingnut wings on the level of complexity and everything. And unfortunately, not everything is fitting like glue. Everything's not fitting like a glove. I've actually had a few fitting issues with it, and I think that's a result of the complexity and the fact that you build these pieces modular and you got to put them together. And no matter how perfect they look when you build the engine or you build the cockpit, no matter how perfect it looks, when you actually try to stick it in the model, something doesn't line up. And I thought I did everything right, but and then you look on the one on the box art and you're kind of like, which is just, of course, flawless. And you're like, bite me.
Now, Bill Campbell just brings up an interesting point. As you know, you're a modeler. If you spend time staring at cheap stuff in the dollar store and contemplate how you can use it.
I was having that thought yesterday. Where did we go? We went to Michael's, and I had to go in and use the facilities while Monica was shopping. And I like to go to Michael's because they're clean. When I go in anyway. But I digress. So I am walking through there, and I actually was getting some of these frames for these pictures that were sent to me. I finally got them framed up. And anyway, I actually been tidying up the TARBIS and fixing some of these busted frames and everything, trying to get this place, ship shape in Bristol fashion. Anywho, I was sitting there looking at stuff, and I had that very thought. I was like, I'm sitting there staring, I could use that as an anchor chain. And I could use that as, and that could make fence line. And that could, and you're like, and the thought, you're a modeler. And what it is, you think in miniature. That's the way I describe it. You're a modeler if you think in miniature. You see small things and go, but they're big at 1/48 scale.
They have little, tools that you can use for different things that if you weren't a modeler, you wouldn't think that would work. Mm-hmm. And you say, oh, that would work doing this, or that would help me do this. And people don't think that way, because we do. Yes.
And we're not the only ones that do that. I mean, people in other professions probably do. I'm sure mechanics go, hey, I bet I could use that for this or whatever. And I imagine everybody kind of does to an extent. One of the things that model building did was it forced me to develop my photography skills. And I actually nowadays I use my cell phone. This little cell phone is what I take most of my pictures with now. It's just so easy. But I still have, that's just the lenses. Oh, the camera's down in that bag. But I still have my A35, my Sony A35 with all about 3 different lenses and a Tamron lens and everything. And I learned all about, f-stop and trying to get depth of field and everything. And, of course, the wider angle of the lens, the better depth of field, so everything stays in focus. And I also learned a trick that you can focus, let's say you're taking a picture of, now cars aren't so bad because cars aren't terribly wide unless you're taking it for a front to rear photo, okay? So, but we're talking about linear depth. But like an airplane where you're going to have a wingspan, what you can do is, make sure the thing is anchored onto a tripod. You focus on the wingtip, take the picture, then focus on the next section, take the picture, and do that all the way down the airplane till you have this series of photos with a section in focus. And then you put it in Photoshop or whatever you're using, and you basically slice the photo up so you're using only the in focus parts. There is software out there that can do that too, but I don't have it. But you got to really be into it. The other option is to back off with a wider angle lens, is a better depth of field, which cell phones tend to have. You know, cell phone, if you're going to photograph with a cell phone, back up. And by the way, while I'm on that was a point that I wanted to make, guys. Please do me a favor if you're sending pictures for viewers builds and you want them to look good, back up enough. If you've got 16 by 19, that's the computer screen. That's the best size to use. Not the end of the world if you're taking square photos. But back up enough that we get the whole thing in the picture with a little extra room on each end. And usually the further back you get, the better, the more equal the focus is if you're using a cell phone or something like that. Just a quick tip. And I'm sitting here looking at that Ontos with 5 clips on it. I used the Gorilla Glue on the front because I got tired of screwing around with it. And I'm like, I punish you. I use Gorilla Glue. And I could probably take the clamps off now. Hang on, I'll get it. I'll just show you how. The weird slopes on the thing make it hard to clamp. Okay. Do not fall off and go boom again. This is what I had to do to clamp this thing down. And you can see if you can see the gap right there. Yeah, there's the gap right there. I just could not get a seal at the front. And it's actually, that probably is small enough to use putty on now. Let's see, I think the Gorilla Glue's been on a few hours. I think it's hardened. I know the model airplane glue has, so I can take these off. All right. Here's the Ontos.
Oh, when is the next viewer's build?
Whenever I get enough pictures.
Okay.
There's not a schedule on those. Now, I did paint the inside. I don't know if you can see it. I did paint the inside white. And I'll probably paint the inside of the ammo rack white. I have to look at some pictures online. And it has, being an old Renwall kit, it has a lot of functioning features. It has the ammo rack, the opening and closing doors. The hatches open up, including this one. By the way, according to the source photos that I got, even though they paint the inside of the vehicle white to enhance the light, they keep the inside of the hatches olive drab so that when you open up, you don't make a nice target out of yourself. And it's got the little gun holders and everything. And weird little vehicle. I don't know why I have such an infatuation with it. It just looks Russian. Now, I tell you what, I'm going to make this the way it's supposed to be. But this looks like a vehicle that you would use in a Godzilla movie, but you put like a maser cannon on it or something. It just has almost a science fiction look to it. That wedge shape and everything. And the Ontos, which is the Greek word for thing. It's a thing, like the Volkswagen. And there's where I had to glue the broken road wheel back on it. Snapped off right at the chassis. And let's see if I can get some light on it. Oh, well. Yeah, I mean, it's a model repair. You guys know what they look like. But it seems that Gorilla Glue seems to have done a good job. I don't want to push on it, but it tightened everything up. Yeah. Hold on, I'll get the Mustang, show you what's going on with that. You're going to see it again in tomorrow's video probably, but what the heck. Already took the pictures and video for that. One thing I've been doing, you might have noticed, is I'm starting to record stuff as I'm doing it because I always forget to mention stuff. Got to do what's fresh in my mind. Now, you've got all this piping and hosing down here that I added today. And this is what the magnets are supposed to go inside this piece. And I forgot to put them in. So That way the bottom of the cowling can clip. There's tubing and piping up under here. It's all in there. The battery box, which is right here, turned a little bit, but now with that framing member on top of it, you can't really tell. You can't see it that well, so it doesn't really matter. Now, the Mustang, I remember this. There's a really good video on how a Mustang works. Got a fully detailed cockpit, which came out really nice. You don't have enough light here, but you can just about read the instruments. All that work, and even sitting here right here like this, looking at it, so dark in there you can't really see it. And I got the the metal seat belts and everything. But this is the armor plate that goes behind the windshield. But the Mustang has two reservoirs, and if I remember correctly, I could be wrong. I think this is the oil reservoir, and this is the engine coolant. I could be wrong on that, but the way it works is, and they actually have, I mean, you could build this engine and use it as an instructional aid for mechanics. They have the in and return lines. I mean, you can barely see that right there. And on this side, you can barely see the return line. And both of them, because remember, there's a couple of different exhausts on the intake, and they have the PE photo etch intake screen, which looks great. I just hope you can see it once the whole airplane's on there. You probably have to look up there with a flashlight. But the Mustang, both of these fluids had to go through the cockpit down into the radiator. One radiator, the bigger radiator, cooled the oil, I think it was, and the little radiator, I think, cooled the coolant, or I may have that backwards. But so you've got like 500-degree fluids flowing one way, going through an air exchanger, okay? The heat would come out the back, being carried by the slipstream. So when these little doors open, you got a little of that jet effect because of the hot air coming out. Then the, I don't know, roughly probably 250-degree oil and coolant would come back into the engine. If you took a hit in the cockpit and it ruptured any one of those lines, you were about to take a high-pressure bath in molten hot magma. And they think that's what happened to Partro Barnes' son, Bill Barnes. He was flying one, he pulled it and went out of control and crashed. And they said their helmets were soaked in, I think it was glycol or whatever they use as the coolant. They think a coolant line burst and sprayed the inside of the cockpit with like 400 or 500-degree, whatever the coolant that was on its way to the radiator. I'm like, good God. I mean, literally scalded alive. So that's why Mustangs, even though they were great air superiority aircraft, they had a lot of issues with ground attack missions and taking out ground fire. These liquid-cooled systems were quite vulnerable to damage, which is why everybody liked these Corsairs and Thunderbolts for the ground pounding work. Big old massive radial where all the bad stuff was up forward of the firewall. And I got to give Tamiya credit. The engineering on this thing is insane. The rudder does move. You'll see in the video tomorrow, they have these bloody near microscopic metal tabs that you have to put on an axle and put in the rudder and then just wedge it in here. You don't really, they tell you just to glue it down here. And so the rudder moves, but you don't see any external hinges like you do on a normal model airplane. One of them kind of poked through a little bit right there, one of the metal pieces. But guys, if you ever decide to get this Tamiya 1/32 scale Mustang, 3 pieces of advice.
Don't.
No. It is a fantastic kit, but you need to know what you're getting in for. But do all your research and set aside the parts you want to use so you don't mix them up because they give you a couple of different versions of the airplane. But I would obviously pre-paint as much as I could. But fit, refit, trial fit. Don't be afraid to sand something down. Make sure you get a nice flush, because I had to clamp the fuselage halves to go together, and they did. They haven't given me any problem. You also might want to keep a magnet handy, because magnets or the tips with a little gum on them make dealing with these little dinky. See, there's a piece of photo etch right there. You know why they didn't just engrave that in plastic? I don't know, but they did. It's just a very advanced kit with a lot to it. You get different radio options depending on if it's Korean, Air Force, World War II, or Korea. And you have to admire the amount of work. But like right here, I had to pinch these parts of the clamp overnight to get the bat. It just didn't, maybe I should have put some shims in or something. But maybe something didn't fit. I don't know. Everything fit right. That should be exact dimensions. But when I put it where it's supposed to be, there was a little daylight gap on the other side. Hindsight being 2020, I probably should have just put a shim in there. So even though it's Tamiya, it's not flawless. But man, it's good. But this is definitely a patience build. If I'd known this was going to be this involved, I probably would have picked a different kit for the Korea build. But
we've all done a lot of those.
Yeah, but it's going to look sweet when it's done. And my plan is it gives you two figures, a pilot figure standing up and a pilot figure sitting down. And my plan is to put it sitting on the ground with the cowling off, or part of the cowling off, and have one of the pilots sitting on the wing and the other one looking at the engine. That's kind of in my head, the way I see it. And but you will learn a lot about the Mustang's inner workings by building this. I mean, it's got every pipe and tube that goes in the real airplane. Again, some of these tubes didn't quite go all the way, so I had to, it's that kind of thing. It's stuff's just maddening when they're just that fraction of a millimeter short. And
but that's the way. That's what a lot of these kits are for, to educate us.
Well, they do a good job of that.
They show you how the stuff actually works and went together.
And the detail, like this little bit of silver on the back of the armor plate of the headrest, that's some kind of component. And it tells you specifically, paint the whole thing semi-gloss black and then paint this part chrome. Okay. Or brush aluminum. And but I decided one thing that made life a little easier. I went ahead and put these parts in without these tubes in, without painting them. I'm going to go in and brush paint them later. I've always been big into pre-painting, but we all know the problem is that the paint intrudes in the way of the glue. And putting plastic on plastic made life a little bit simpler. And but amazing model though. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, like 16 runner trees. It's unbelievable.
A lot of parts.
Oh God, yes. And
how much was that kit?
It was a gift. I believe Garfield sent it to me, but they run a couple $100 or more. They are not cheap. I think you guys have seen everything else, so it's not. Hey, these shuttles you got for me, these had a lot more going to them than I covered. By the way, I want to say thanks to Fran. He gave me this A10 model. So I'm gonna. But the one of my problems is staying on target. Oh, it's gotten dark outside. But one of the problems I run into, as you guys are well aware of, is I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10. There's probably one around here I'm forgetting about. Open boxes that I've started on, even if it's just pre-painting stuff. And, I distract easily. Squirrel.
Well, because the problem is you start a kit and you get to a certain point where you either come up on part of the assembly that stumps you or you get bored.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, well, let me play with this one for a while. And then before you know it, there's 4 kits that are on the bench.
That's
that aren't
it. This, talking about World War I airplanes, this is the Havilland DH-10A, which actually I believe is a post-war airplane. It's an old Aurora kit. And got started on it, and it's Ken. Hang on. Merge with Steve Manoia. Merge. Hello, Kenneth.
Hello, Maxie.
You're with us now.
Well, hi there, Shelley.
Hi, Stevie.
Okay, that's just getting weird.
I'm back.
We'll notify the authorities.
Please do. Or the media, either one.
They want to videotape the arrest. So we were talking about World War I rigging, World War I models, and opening 5 or 10 or 12 models and having stuff going all, kind of lose your focus.
Yeah, you do that all the time. Hello, everybody. I see people saying hi.
Hi. Well, the plan with the shuttlecraft, since I had you get me 2 of them, is to make one of them Columbus, and the other one Galileo, 7, and make a mock-up of Shuttle Bay to put them in. And that one, if I do a good job, I know the wife will want that one in the house. Remember, if it's out here on display, if for one reason or another, either a lack of space or whatever, it didn't pass muster to go in the house.
It failed muster. Okay.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times it's just a matter of having room. But I actually, since I bought this shelf, rearranged the models, and did a little house cleaning in the house, I actually have some shelf space in the house. But I want to say I'm not using it right now because I want to save it for some models that I have planned. One problem when you deal with that Targi, that gigantic sky crane, is the model's so big, especially if you have the rotor spread out, you have to figure out, okay, where am I going to display this thing? The nice thing is at 1/35th scale, I could dedicate an entire shelf to it and maybe put an armor vehicle and a Jeep and some other stuff with it. I have that AFE 1/35th scale Marine Corps Jeep, which is the M38 or M36, the Sergeant Carter Jeep. So I have a couple of vehicles that could go nicely with it. But then, of course, you run into the big problem. Okay, I can put it out here, but no one will ever see it. If I want to put it in the house, I'm going to have to fold the rotors on it, and it's just.
The crowd wants you to paint one of the shuttles in Luftwaffe camo.
I tell you what, crowd, I'll meet you halfway. You send me the shuttle and I'll do it. These 2 are committed. I don't know, Steve, if I had you buy 3 of them, I probably would do something like that. Although I think it would look better in RAF colors.
Yeah. I don't know.
Do a half and half. Do one half side Luftwaffe and one half side RAF.
There might be one left. Let me check.
You know what color scheme? If you wanted to do a joke fantasy scheme like that, you know what color scheme would look good on a Star Trek shuttlecraft? Would be a late war tricolor United States Navy paint scheme, the grays and the blues. I think that would,
Thank God, I thought you were going to say pink.
No. Actually, no. You want the cool shuttle, you got to put it in Winnebago markings.
Yeah.
In fact, no, I'm not going to do that. I would just think when I get the helicampers, I should get, but they'd be like 148 scale. I should get a 148 scale shuttle and put it in Winnebago markings and park it there with the helicampers.
Yeah.
But
take a picture of Buc-ee's and put it in the parking lot.
There you go. Now you're cooking with gas, but great ideas. One of the problems we've got is these things are already getting dust on them. Man, if there's one thing I hate doing, it's dusting off models. I highly recommend a can of air or something that, in fact, you can use your spray gun if it'll reach, and clean it out, and then use it to blast dust off your models. And of course, a soft bristle brush. But God, it is really hard, especially if you have a nice glossy paint job. It's really hard to dust off your models and not damage them. And we've talked about that a few episodes. Well, that's what I was saying. Air is probably the best thing to use.
No. Get an air cleaner, air filter.
Ken, you're still going to get dust.
Not nearly as much.
So you're talking about one of those ionic breezes or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
It's actually not a bad idea.
There you go. Lancer Bell says, make the second shuttle as the Mystery Machine from Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, that would work. You guys keep that up and we're going to have a fantasy shuttle build.
Or how about Erie Lackawanna colors?
That would actually work. Actually, any railroad markings would probably work, but Erie Lackawanna, that would actually look particularly, I think that would look sharp. Whatever you're doing, stop it. It's making a horrible sound.
Okay.
But one of the models is when I was sent the B-17s, I was sent all kinds of aftermarket stuff with them. And a lot of cool stuff. And extra detail parts for either old 666 Lucky or the early E version of the Japanese hands. And he sent me the Japanese decals. These are all correct because I'm going to do one of the B-17s in the Japanese colors because the Japanese did capture one. There are photos out there you can go see. And they put it in markings and they used it. They studied it, learned its weaknesses, and I think they were rather impressed with it also. But all I've really done on them so far is, well, one of them actually really got started, but most of them I just pre-painted the inside. But one of them, I think I actually started already actually building, or not. Perhaps my giving myself too much credit. Hey man, I could have swore I started building one of them. What's that doing in there?
Brilliant, my little Mark.
A SpaceX logo on the side.
The
Yeah,
what?
perfect.
The what?
A SpaceX logo.
That's apropos. That may turn out not to be a fantasy build.
You might actually use one.
Put SpaceX on the side logo and then put in big letters DOGE.
I don't put anything past that guy. I used to think he was a crackpot. No, he may be, but he's a crackpot that seems to make things happen. But okay,
You're not a crackpot if it works.
yeah, really. What is it Jack Sparrow said? The difference between genius and insanity can be a very thin thread.
Fine line.
It really is. I don't know where I'm going to build these B-17s when I'm done. I'm just glad they're not 148 scale. Or are they? No, they're one. But, see, thought I had that seam filled in and then primed it. Oh, God, that was disappointing. One thing I've learned to do, though, Glue Trooper showed me, is run tape down each side and then slather in the putty. That way, when it hardens, you peel the tape off, you just have a nice square, straight line of putty. Yeah, this is really early into this, though. I don't actually, you know what, I think the only thing I puttied up was the front. Well, that looks like a putty buildup or a glue buildup there. Where'd that come from? Oh, well. That's probably a paint buildup. Butt ugly airplane, but it's going to look cool on the shelf. I might use the guitar string on that one to rig that one. But so let's see. Was there any other business? I think that was all I had as far as new information went. Yeah, I guess that's everything. So that I didn't have a lot of time to put stuff together for tonight with everything that's going on, but now that we're here, what does everybody want to talk about? I'll throw the ball back to you guys.
Well, Nathan says that one of the reasons why these new model kits are so accurate and detailed is when they pay the licensing fee, they get access to all the drawings and schematics. That's partially true.
Could be. It makes sense.
The reason they're so accurate is, because believe it or not, model kit company sends somebody there to actually measure.
Oh, Tamiya was doing that in the 60s.
Huh?
Tamiya was one of the first companies to do that. They did that back in the 60s.
Yeah.
In 65, they sent a guy with a camera, a lot of film, and a measuring tape to, I want to say it was Fort Meade, to the military museum, and he was measuring every armored vehicle they had there, taking gazillion photos, and that's one reason they started making such accurate tanks.
That's pretty much how it's done.
Of course, today you can take the drawings and feed them into a computer and feed it into a CNC machine and cut a super mold. And good Lord.
You know, so though it's about $60,000
to make a mold.
Yeah.
Depending on how many parts, I guarantee you, this P-51 costs 5 times that.
Well, that's a plane.
Yeah.
But, you know, like for a 124 scale, 125th scale car, it's like 60.
Oh, yeah. And we can all thank George Toda for his side slide injection molding system to give us those nice one-piece bodies.
Yep.
Man, that this industry probably owes as much to him as it does to anybody in its history.
Well, he revolutionized the molding ability.
He really did. And but Toda, it helped that he was a car guy, you know, him and Daryl Branster, you know, were racing cars and stuff. And it really helped that he was like the cat from AMT. You know, these guys were really into what they were doing. And that makes a huge difference. Lou was telling me after he met Mr. Tamiya, for those that don't know, Louis Lee over at JD Hobbies got to go. He went over to Japan, and he's got a rapport with several of their senior execs. So he got to actually meet and go out to dinner with Mr. Tamiya, and just really loved. He's a wonderful guy. Loves what he's doing. Kid at heart, and those kind of people. But it's just good, you know. It's probably good for companies like Mobius and Polar Lights that Tamiya has a policy of only making for the most part, only making real world stuff. They don't get into sci-fi, fantasy, that sort of thing. Because can you imagine a Godzilla or a King Kong from Tamiya?
No, it would be unbelievable.
It'd be off the chains. Although I got to admit, I don't really have any complaints with the Polar Lights Godzilla. It's accurate to the original one. And the only thing that's off scale is the tank is the wrong scale. It's about the monster's 1 to 144 scale. I think the tank is somebody told me, but it's bigger than it should be. I guess was the thing.
Well, the company that's picked up the nano on that is Bandai.
Really?
They now have Godzilla kits that you can only get in Japan that are just ridiculous.
You know, my understanding is that the Godzilla movie that's had an effect on the industry, and I don't mean the kit model industry, I mean the movie industry, and I don't just mean the kaiju films. I mean the movie industry, was Godzilla -1. I've heard various reports that the movie cost between $13 and $15 and $16 million to make. It did really well at the box office. It's universally accepted by both traditional fans and the new fans. Like the #2 movie in Japan. Well, like the original.
That's a really low amount, Max. Are you sure that's zero behind that?
Ken, I thought that very thing. Here's the deal on that. As I understand it, okay, because I got curious and started snooping into this. Here's what they did that kept the price down. First off, they shot everything in Japan. All right. They did not use high dollar, well-known actors. The actors in Japan are fairly well-known, but it's not like they went and got Brad Pitt, right? There's $20 million off your budget right there. They had the rights, so they used the original score, so music wasn't a problem. The film was, of course, largely CGI. Well, that's where the Japanese thrive. They're you know how they're in love with all technology. a lot of the now I think the CGI was actually done in Korea. I could be wrong on that, but I think it was done in Korea. But for them, that's like us having it done in Canada. You know, it's not that big a deal. And the other thing is that you think about it, you've got the technicians. They stayed with basically more or less the original story. I've seen several documentaries on how they did the CGI, and it's all in a computer. There wasn't even a mocap or anything. They didn't have a huge budget, so they went with what they had. When you think about the actual sets that are used, that aren't that many, and they were uniquely set up, but they also don't have the bureaucracy that Hollywood has. The Japanese movies generally just don't have that big of a budget. Neither do Chinese movies. And yet some of them are really impressive. So you put those things together, you get the corporate executives out of the way. You have Toho, who it's their treasured property. The people who wrote the movie and everything and produced it understood and were fans of the genre, so they were respectful to it. Shin Godzilla didn't cost that much to make by comparison to an American movie. And ditching the over high-paid American actors and the bloated Hollywood system with all the, I'm not trying to bash unions here, but, just all American union rules. America is the most expensive place in the world to shoot a movie, which is why so many American movies are shot in Canada and in Georgia. You watch movies and it was like, was it The Avengers we watched the other night? And it was like, thanks to Georgia. I'm like, Georgia? Yeah. You know how much it costs to shoot in California? It just wasn't that hard for them to do. It was technology that they already have. Since they already owned the property, they didn't have any licensing fees. But I would say keeping it out of Hollywood and using relatively new actors that work for a much lower rate, it's hard to calculate how much that saved them. And here we are. What was this movie? The one with all the robots and Chris Pratt just made. My wife and I just watched it. Electric City? You know the movie I'm talking about?
I've heard of it. Yes. I saw it on Hulu. I didn't see the movie, but I saw the advertisement for it.
Well, we have whatever streaming service was on Netflix or Cinemax or whatever, but Paramount, I forget which one. But
maybe that's what it is. Maybe it was Netflix.
But we decided to watch it because we're Chris Pratt fans, and it had Millie Bobby Brown, and I was like, playing a normal girl this time, and she's actually grown up to a very, very lovely lady. But anyway, we watched it. And we decided we liked it. The movie's been a lot of people like, what am I watching? But like, okay, this is actually kind of cool in its own way. I mean, it got a lot of big names. Woody Harrelson, a lot of its voiceover work. Woody Harrelson, and I mean, just half of Hollywood was in this movie. And then I hear, this is like supposed to be the most expensive movie ever made at $380 million. I don't know if that's true. Sometimes they say that just to try to get people to come watch it.
What movie is that?
Electric City? Is that the name of it?
Oh, this one. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was like, what's with all the goofy looking robots? And for those who haven't seen it, basically all of Disney, it's kind of alternative history. In the 50s, Disney makes robots that are like AI back in the 50s. So we start using them in advertising and everything, and they start doing all the jobs. And eventually they become sentient. Rebel, there's a civil war. This is after the Civil War.
Barry said it's Electric State. Electric State.
Okay, there you go. Okay, go with that. $300 million Electric State. Now I look at it and all the CGI and the big name actors and I think it's a Hollywood product, and I'm like, yeah, all of that costs big, big money. Some people hate the movie, some people love it. Some are like me. It was fun. It was just a romp. I enjoyed it. Okay, but I didn't get. There were some aspects of it that I found eerily possibly in our future, but
Sluggo says that's a stupid movie. Couldn't finish it.
Everybody your own thing. But I was like, I mean, yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't have paid money to go see it at a theater. But yeah, God, I just had not a horrible thought, but it's kind of like what a movie would be like if Corman ever had a really big budget. But anyway, which is probably unfair to Corman. but $300 million for that. I'm like, really? Because it's all green screen. And the Japanese are cranking something out for a 20th of that. That, frankly, is a lot better. But there you have it. And anyway. So, yeah, I haven't seen a Godzilla -1 kit model, and I think that would fly off the shelves. Everybody who builds Godzilla or kaiju stuff would have to have one. It was good creature development to make a good kit. In fact, you could make two of them. You can make one before his exposure and one after. That way you could have, get two kits out of the same property. And you know what I liked about Godzilla -1? The people are like, what's his mission? What's his mission? Crush, kill, destroy. That's his mission. No deeper meaning, just a good monster movie.
That's what makes a good monster movie.
There you go. And they say that zombies are supposed to be those terrifying monsters because they're mindless and you can't stop them or scare them or intimidate them. I'm like, I'm sorry. Have you ever seen a kaiju flick? When was the last time a kaiju, except for King Kong, who's a thinking creature and kind of from once in a while, screw this, I'm out of here.
Bill Campbell says, Max, didn't you see kits for that on one of your trips?
For what, Godzilla -1?
I don't know.
No,
he didn't specify.
No, I didn't. Steve had brought up a point a while back. If you want to start a kit model company, the one thing you have to do is get a lot of mileage out of a mold. And one of the things that makes kits of NASCAR so popular, and it was at Salvino you were talking about, he only got a few molds, but all he has to do is keep making different decals.
And that's what he does.
And
I mean, Scale Model Apprentice just said, well, Jim Rogers just said, we get about 40,000 out of the mold. It's only 2,500 of each livery. But there's only 3 body styles in NASCAR, and there's 30 different decals and color schemes.
So effectively, you have 30 kits for one mold.
But it's one mold.
Yep. The other thing you got going for you, that's why I was thinking another vehicle. I was just going through my head, okay, I want to get the mileage out of a mold. What are some of the things I make? Well, in cars, NASCAR, okay, for where we just discussed that one. In trucks, the Ford F-150, because there's just so many things you can do with that. Out of street sedans, cars like, actually SUVs, because every police department uses them. They're used for everything now. They're the new station wagon. In armor, there are actually 2 vehicles in armor, one in particular, the T-55 tank and maybe the T-62. Because those things have been made for so long in so many different variants and used by so many different militaries, you can make dozens of different ones from the almost exact same kit with some minor parts changes.
And the Knight family just pointed out airliners.
What's that? Oh yeah, airliners. That's one of the reasons airliners pop. Every freaking airline out there's got a different livery, and a lot of airlines have multiple liveries. Obviously, in military aircraft, the F-35, everybody makes an F-35 because there's a dozen countries using it. But the Mustang, the Thunderbolt, again, you've got the common ones that everybody makes because you can just keep putting them out in different, especially probably one of the most versatile World War II airplanes you can make a model of is the Corsair, because it was used all the way up through Korea. So you've got the British used it. I should say the Commonwealth used it. The French used it. We used it, obviously. The Navy and Marines. Guatemala had them. I mean, They were used all over the world and for 30-something years. So, and just all you need are a handful of different components to make the variant changes. So, yeah, the F4 Phantom, another one used by countless air forces in a dozen different versions. Can't quite use the exact same mold because the F4J and the F4B and the F4S did have some reasonably significant exterior differences, but you could still get away with a lot. A lot of the parts would be reusable. And the Starfighters, used by a bunch of God. I love it when you look at when you go to a Wikipedia page. This piece of equipment was used by, and you see this long list, and most people go, "Oh, this airplane must have been popular because used by all those people." I'm thinking that'd be a good thing to make a kit model of because look at all the different ones we could make.
Craig Swain says, "How about the T6?"
Yeah, actually, used by all the services to train pilots, Army, Navy, and Marines. Used in combat in Korea as the Mosquito. Used by countless countries, and a lot of them in civilian colors. In fact, the racing planes, and I have the Mustang T6 set of racing planes in the house also. So yeah, absolutely. That's a good choice. The ones that would constrain you are airplanes that were like wartime only, like the Japanese Tony or the Vultee BT-13, only used for a few years by each service. They, just not a lot of flexibility there. And
look at the ships: the Iowa, the New Jersey, the Wisconsin.
Well, you got 4 ships of the same class, but you really only have 4.
It's the same mold, different decals.
Well, the thing is that I don't know how well. I think you would be better off to market that as one ship with 4 sets of decals and let people choose their own. Because if you try to go, oh, look, we make one as the Iowa and one as the Missouri, you're going to lose out on sales because people are going to be like, you know what, I'm not buying 2 kits just to get the decals from,
But believe it or not, that's what they do.
Oh, I'm sure they do. And
KOSC says, Max, another is the C-130.
Yeah, been made since the late 50s, still in production today. The one thing about the C-130 that sort of got you, though, is the variants of the C-130 look very different. That airplane has changed a lot over time, despite the same basic layout. But that being said, still, you're absolutely right. That is an airplane. The major models of it could be, you get a lot of mileage out of a mold. Something like the Sky Crane, you're not going to get that much out of because our Army is about the only ones that used it other than Erickson Heavy Lift. And although it had a long service life, there just aren't that many things you can do with it. But the Chinook, you could probably get away with a few more because it had more iterations.
The F-104.
Well, I mentioned that one earlier.
Oh, sorry.
And F-86, there's one. It's, yeah. Huh. And some of the airplanes, though, it's surprising. For example, the F-86 came in some variants, and so did the F-100. You couldn't use the same mold because the airplanes were that different, even though there were iterations of the same airplane. You might be able to use some components, but it's like the F-4B and the F-4J. People go, oh, well, no, actually the F-4J had a different landing gear, it was wider, it had a lot of external. You might get away with about 70% of the parts, but there's some stuff you're going to have to mold differently. So what you do is let's say you're going to go with the F4J and the F4B. Well, if the landing gears are different, then you're going to have to make a section that plugs into each kit so that you can use the same wing with just a different landing gear array. So you need that area to be interchangeable. The F-86, they actually changed same with the Banjo, the Banshee. They actually changed the fuselage quite a bit. Even the Panther had, they got longer and longer wings, and the late model Banjos were much bigger. So you can't really reuse the molds. The F-86, you could use some of it, but there were enough changes, especially when you have the Sabre Dog. We're talking different tails and everything, so that gets a little dicier. But when you deal with one airplane like the Mustang, that from the P-51D to the P-51K, externally they look almost identical, you can get away with a lot.
Sluggo, stop.
What's he doing?
He's getting carried away.
Well, anything interesting? I'm not able to read the comments.
Yeah, there should be a plane called the FU.
Well, you do know they used to have FU in some of the numbers, FU-396.
Yes, we do. Yes, yeah.
Which I believe stood for fighter unit, but...
Rob Altus says Taiwan has a fighter called the FCK-1.
Okay, well...
I'm not even going to comment on that.
Well, the colonel was telling me the air base that he had his dogfight over is today. They call it Noi Bai, but back then its name was Fukien. Phuc space Yen, and I was like, I can only imagine the colorful names you guys have, and I'm like, we're not going to say it. Everybody's thinking it.
We're not going there.
Stuart Gregory says we painted 4Q2 on the nose of our helicopter.
Yeah. I remember seeing a patch of the skydiver at his jump seat. It was an oval patch, had a fork and a U. But anyway, and we're not doing too bad for a completely unplanned live stream.
Don Lee is saying, good night, Max and Kleppertruppen. Life is demanding attention.
Well, have a good evening, sir. In fact, I think we'll wrap up here in a few minutes. It's going on 9 o'clock. And to quote the colonel, I'm thinking about getting back to the ship and getting supper.
Well, before we chime off here, I want to wish you the best tomorrow on your first leg of your final flight. And I want to just leave you with the following phrase. Stay horizontal.
Yeah. I have 4 legs. I have 4 segments left to fly. The first day, we just go to Kennedy overnight at the T-Way Hotel. Second night, we go to Vegas, get off at lunchtime. Third day, Vegas, home, where my wife will be waiting for me. And then Tuesday, turn the stuff in. At this point in my career, I am in the don't F you mode. There are no heroes this late in the game. Make sure the airplane is fully reusable. You don't scare yourself. You don't hurt yourself. You don't get yourself in trouble. Don't bend anything. Don't break anything. And be nice to everybody.
And have clean pants when you land on your feet.
There you go, baby. And
and I will just say that with you stepping out of the cockpit for the final time, it will cause me to pause when reserving future flights.
Well, I appreciate that. And it will. The future is unknown, but it'll very possibly be the last time I actually fly an airplane, because my lovely wife has been the perfect airline wife for 20 years, but she's just getting worse. And I keep watching these channels like Blanco Lirio. They keep profiling these mishaps, and I'm just like, you know what? There are other things in life. I've flown over 18,000 hours. It's gotten to be work, and I like hanging out with you guys, building models and making videos a lot more. And that's what I want to do. So if I fly anything, it'll probably be a drone or an RC.
Rob Altus says, do you have to turn in your plane? And KLSNC says, Max, just don't make the news.
Yeah, really. Stay off the YouTube news feed. That is my goal in aviation. Stay out of the news feed.
KLSNC says you should wear a World War II bomber pilot uniform for the last flight.
They actually did issue us those bomber jackets, which are no longer part of the uniform. But I mean, last flight, what are they going to do? Fire me?
Well, you're going to Las Vegas, right?
Yeah.
I think you should fly it in an Elvis jumpsuit and play Viva Las Vegas over the intercom system. And perhaps down the aisle with a red-headed stewardess protections Anne Margaret.
Yeah, because my wife's going to let me survive that.
That'll be on YouTube for about 20 different people.
Immediately while the plane's still in the air.
Right up here on the wall, I have my old headshot from when I did the acting thing. And when Monica found that when we got married, she found my old headshots, and she goes, "That's a great picture." I said, "Thanks." She goes, if you ever cheat on me, she goes, you know, if you ever cheat on me, this is the one I'm going to have the police put on the milk carton. But anyway, so I don't want to be a milk carton kid.
To even think there might have been a possibility of that happening.
Yeah, I don't want to be a milk carton kid. She's, and I understand everything, the Learjet in Philly, the crap in DC, Southwest tried to take off on Orlando on a taxiway yesterday, the Caravan in Alaska, they just cratered one overseas. I forget what airline it was, some places I'd never heard of. But I mean, and of course now it's all because aviation's under a microscope, it's all making the news feed. You know, little screw ups are getting in the news that aren't newsworthy. This taking off on a taxiway. I think I know what happened. Orlando has parallel taxiways, so traffic can go both directions. And my guess, he was going down the taxiway, made a left turn. They took later for takeoff, so he made the next left turn. He had to make the second left turn to be on the runway. But that's why our SOP requires when you take the runway, you both look out. There's a red flag on each side with the runway number. You read out that red flag's runway number. Then you look at the approach and say, runway 36 left, final approach path confirmed, final approach path confirmed, clear. We look and make sure nobody's coming, and we read that thing before we get on the runway. Just like every approach we do is back, even on a beautiful day, it's backed up by an instrument approach because guys have landed on the wrong runway. Landing on a wrong runway is a lot easier to do than you would think. But, no matter how much you train people, they're still people, and mistakes are going to get made.
A military guy landed at the wrong airport.
Yeah, he landed at Peter O'Knight. Hold on, Ken. I'm going to flesh that out a little bit. That was a C-17 that landed at Peter O'Knight in St. Petersburg instead of MacDill. The runways are oriented the same way, and Peter O'Knight is on the approach to MacDill, although it's much, much, much smaller. But I found out because I was flying with an Air Force C-17 guy. And yes, it probably ended that guy's flying career in the Air Force as well as probably ending his Air Force career. But apparently he had been going for like 16 straight hours.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Yeah, there was a huge fatigue issue. The general had to be where he had to be, or whatever had to go. When you're a captain, you don't say no to the general, even if it's violating the rules. So there was more to that one than met the eye. And I got to be honest with you, he got that big airplane stopped in that tiny little runway. That's actually kind of impressive.
That is impressive to be able to accomplish that. Nothing got broke. He did it all on the runway.
Yeah. So
they did that on Banachek.
I remember that episode. They stole the DC-8.
Yeah.
They had a made-for-TV movie with Don Meredith and Larry Wilcox and Joe Campanella where they hijacked a sheriff's helicopter. It was a really stupid concept for a movie, but it was TV. And to make all the sheriff's helicopters land. And then they took off in one of them after they'd all landed. And it turned out the whole thing was to get all of their helicopters grounded so they wouldn't know they changed the non-directional beacon at some airport where a plane was supposed to land loaded with gold. And they were able to draw it in by altering the nav. And I'm like, so wait a minute, you went to the trouble to ground all the sheriff's helicopters. What about every other aircraft that's flying around? It was a stupid idea. But, it was one of those 70s made-for-TV movies. Just an excuse to, have the sheriff's helicopters fly around and, do a lot of beauty passes and look cool and everything.
Hey, but it had Don Meredith in it.
There you go. And
the man famous for the song, "Turn out the lights, the party's over."
Well, Meredith was more famous as a football player, wasn't
he? Yeah. No.
He did a bunch of episodes of Police Story, I think, but
when he did Monday Night Football, that just made him like the household darling.
Yeah. And
Frank Field says, fortunately, a C-17 can stop at about 35 feet.
Yeah, the C-17 it's an impressive airplane. It's a goofy-looking airplane, but you know what? If it looks goofy and does a good job, it ain't goofy. But
as long as it works.
Yeah, that's Murphy's.
Those things are Those things are so damn quiet, they're scary.
Well, that's the part of please don't shoot me down. And but the C-17, the problem with the C-7...
No, not noisy at all.
Well,
no, that's what I'm saying. He said, please don't shoot me down. And I said, for what, being noisy?
No. So when you're flying around, when you're flying around a combat zone, they don't hear you and shoot at you. The enemy tends to shoot at airplane noises in the dark. By the way, the talk about flying with the C-17 guys, they were mentioning that the Air Force is really dogging those airplanes out because the C-17 was supposed to be what they call a theater cargo plane. Like you move them to Europe, have them fly around Europe. But given all the conflicts and stuff we've been in, they've been using them like C-5s and the old C-141s. They're doing all this over water stuff and everything, and then working as a theater airplane, and they're just flying the wings off of them. And it's turned out to be a really durable airplane, but that wasn't really its intent. We're supposed to have another heavy lifter. Instead, we're having to do everything. And there's only so many of those things. But
and they're all up here at Dover Air Force Base.
Yeah, good place for them. Well, all right, guys, it's going on 9 o'clock. We're going to call that a wrap. I don't have an intro and outro to play, so I'm just going to shut this thing down when we go. But I want to thank everyone for coming out. Huh?
Sing for us, Max. Sing for us.
Ken, I get paid by people not to sing.
Okay. All right, Ken, here we go. Turn out the lights, the party's over.
And on that note, boys and girls, we will say good night while you still have the remnants of your sanity. Guys, I want to thank everyone for coming out. I hope you had a great time. Ken, Steve, say your nighty nights, John boy.
Okay. Oh, you're going to make me go first. Okay.
You said John boy, go.
Oh, okay. Fine. Thanks for coming, guys. Sorry I was late to the party. Max caught me on the road. But
he missed the staff
meeting. I made it. Yeah, I didn't know there was a live stream tonight. But anyway, I made it anyway, and I enjoyed it. So thanks for spending your Friday nights with us.
Good night, guys. Thanks for tuning in. And as you can see, we don't need no stinking script.
Well, guys, once again, thanks for everything.
Next live stream. Have a great week.
I'll let you know when the next live stream is going to be right now. Let me see. I almost hung up on you guys. And hit the button. Oh, it's not that button. Hit the button, Max. Okay, let's see here. I think we can probably do one on the 29th. I know I won't be at work. Guys, once again, thanks for everything. We'll catch you later. As always, model on.